Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Welcome on in to another edition of Eye on the Enemy, powered by the Eagles Pin Pull Network. I'm your host, John Stolnis. I'm a writer for BleedingGreenNation.com, and coming up, NFC Championship weekend. The Eagles taking on their NFC division rivals, the Washington Commanders, for a trip to the Super Bowl. Of all of the opponents you could have dreamt up at the start of the season, could you ever have imagined a less likely team than the Washington Commanders standing between the Eagles and a return trip to the Super Bowl? And yet here we are on Sunday afternoon. That is exactly what is going to happen. Joining me in just a second to help break this game down will be Jamual Forrest from the Trap or Dive podcast. He's also an analyst for the SB Nation Commander site, Hogs Haven. We'll go over everything there is to talk about with this game. Plus, I'll take a look at the AFC Championship game and see who the Eagles are going to play in the Super Bowl. And with just some of the latest news and notes from Friday, practice updates. There are some injury concerns in a couple of different spots. We'll let you know who practiced, who didn't, their status as it looks right now, late Friday afternoon, before the official injury report comes out, how it's looking like the Eagles are going to line up here on Sunday afternoon, and then I'll give you my prediction at the end of the podcast. But like I said off the top, the fact that this NFC Championship game is against a division rival is absolutely wild. I mean, maybe we would have thought it would have been the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that would have surprised many of us, but the Washington Commanders sitting here with a rookie quarterback coming into Philadelphia as the number 6 seed, trying to unseat the NFC East champion, Philadelphia Eagles, for a spot in the Super Bowl is absolutely wild. These teams have played each other 182 times over the years, 182 times over decades of football. Think about the amazing games these teams have played. The body bag game, Randall's 5 touchdowns in that 42-30, whatever it was, win in 1989, clinching the playoffs in 1992 at the Vet on the final play of the game in the final week of the season. Monday Night Massacre. All of the other games, the Commanders, nay, the Washington Redskins, have had a tremendous amount of success against the Eagles too over the years. We don't want to talk about any of that. If you actually go to NFL Throwbacks website, YouTube page, they have a great breakdown specifically on Eagles Commanders or Eagles Washington football franchise best moments from that 1988 to 1992 stretch, because they played one incredible game every year during that stretch. And now here we are, the biggest game in the history of this rivalry that spans 182 games. The Commanders lead the overall series 90-86 with 6 ties in there. This has been a razor thin rivalry that these two teams have had. They've only met once in the postseason in these two franchises' history. Can you believe that? They've only met once in the playoffs, back in the 1990 wild card round. That was the same year as the body bag game, by the way, that Monday Night Football game where every Washington Redskin guy was getting dragged off the field, taken off on a cart. They came back to Philadelphia in the first round of the playoffs and steamrolled the Eagles right out of the postseason, cost Buddy Ryan his job. He probably wasn't earning an extension anyway, but 3 straight seasons of first-round playoff exits for the Eagles, ushered in by Joe Gibbs and that 1990 Washington team. That's the last time and the only time these two teams have met in the playoffs. Now, here's something I didn't realize. This is the first NFC Championship game that will feature 2 teams from the NFC East since 1986. That's like 40 years, gang. 1986 was the last time 2 teams from the NFC East met in the NFC Championship game. This same Washington franchise went into New York and were shut out 17-0. 17-0 in a game in which each team had just 12 first downs. I was looking at some of the offensive stats of that game. Hey, boy. That was not an interesting game. I don't remember watching that game. I was like a year or two before I started following the NFL. But looking at some of the notes and some of the stats from that game, it was pretty ugly. So this is a historic matchup between these two teams, the biggest game between these two franchises in the storied history of these franchises. They have already met twice before this year. The Eagles should have won both games. They should be going for the 3-game sweep, again, which shouldn't worry anybody because we saw the Eagles do that to the Giants back in 2022. In Week 11, here in Philadelphia, the Eagles won 26-18. It was a larger margin. It was 26-12 until the Commanders scored a touchdown with a little less than 2 minutes left in garbage time. Jaden Daniels was held to a season-low 18 yards rushing on 7 attempts, sacked 3 times. Jalen Hurts went 18 for 28 for 221 yards. Saquon Barkley, 146 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Austin Eckler was a little bit of a pistol in that game out of the backfield as a receiver. 8 catches for 89 yards for the Commanders, but they generally shut Terry McLaurin down in that game. Quinyon Mitchell with a lockdown job on Terry McLaurin. In week 16 in D.C., the Commanders were more effective offensively, a healthier Jaden Daniels in that one, coming back to beat the Eagles 36-33 with a last-minute touchdown drive and 22 fourth-quarter points. It was the most points scored against Vic Fangio this season, and one of only 2 instances in which the Eagles defense gave up more than 30 points. The Eagles did force 5 turnovers in that game, including what should have been the game-sealing interception. They should have won the game with a little over 4 minutes left and the Commanders down. The Eagles pick off Jaden Daniels, get the ball deep in their territory, but they can't put the game away. Devontae Smith, of course, drops that ball over the middle. That would have sealed the win for the Eagles. Jaden Daniels gets another attempt, gets a do-over, and then he goes down and leads that team to the game-winning touchdown. But the Eagles forced 5 turnovers, ran for over 200 yards, and somehow still lost, even with Kenny Pickett in the game. Saquon Barkley had a great start to the game and finished with terrific numbers, 150 yards rushing, 29 carries, 2 touchdowns, but was largely shut down throughout most of the second half of that game. A.J. Brown had 97 yards in the air. So that is how these two teams stack up heading into this weekend. And joining me to help break down this NFC Championship game between these two storied division rivals, Jamual Forrest from the Trap or Dive podcast. He's also a Commanders analyst for Hogs Haven, the SB Nation Commanders site. I was just on Jamal's show earlier in the week talking things over from an Eagles perspective. You know, so much has changed in the couple of days since we last chatted. Jamal, thanks for coming back on Eye on the Enemy. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right, John. Appreciate you having me back, boss man. How you feeling this week? Well, a couple of days since we last spoke.
I said over at the beginning of the podcast, this will be the 183rd meeting between these two teams in this history. And on this Sunday afternoon, it will be the biggest out of all of those games, right? 182 times these teams have met. Commanders have won 90. The Eagles have won 86. I mean, this is about as close as a divisional matchup as you can get over the course of the decades these two teams have been playing. And this game on Sunday, there has never been a more consequential Eagles-Washington franchise game in the storied history of these two teams. And that's just incredible to think about.
Yeah, what a time to be alive. Like, literally, it's one of these things where it's 2 different perspectives coming into this from a fan base standpoint too. Like the Eagles have seen different patches of success since, you know, I'm 31. So like put it in that, different patches of success where, you know, you had the McNabb era and you're seeing playoffs after playoffs. You're seeing moments where like you're getting to the conference championship game and you finally get over a hump that one time, but y'all see the success of making it this far. And then you have the Mike Vick era where, you know, it was short-lived, but it was still good. And then you finally get the Carson Wentz era. Then you get this era with Jalen Hurts, but you're seeing like these periods of success where y'all are making it to the playoffs. Y'all have like this leadership structure in place, and Washington is just dragging along. 3rd place, 4th place, the random 1st place, and everybody got to be trash in the division for Washington to be 1st place. They got to go on these impeccable runs. And everything to this point, John, leads to Washington after 2 years after getting rid of that terrible owner whose name does not need to get mentioned on this show, is removed, and you see this moment where the fan base, who some on Philly side think came out of nowhere, but we always existed, it was just dormant, has a period where it's like we finally have something to root for that's tangible, that we know is not going to get in the way from ownership, and we're competing all across the board and make it to this level to where now is win or go home, all things on the line against your divisional opponent. And it's something that either side has not seen before, literally against each other at this point of the season.
And Jamal, I was thinking about, like, because I mean, the only other time these two teams have played is in the 1990 wild card round, and I remember that game distinctly because I'm 48 now. So I go back to the Buddy Ryan days. I go back to the late 80s as far as watching Eagles games. And that 1990 wild card game was just a crusher. We refer to it as the Ben Smith game because Ben Smith returned a fumble for a touchdown. I think it was right before the first half was over. That got overturned because the ball carrier's elbow was down before the ball came out and crushed the team. It led to the firing of Buddy Ryan. That was just it. But I mean, we had gone since there was a playoff win, I think in 1981 after the Super Bowl appearance the year before with Ron Jaworski, and then they didn't win another playoff game until 1992. So it was there was like 13 years between playoff victories or something like that, much like the kind of drought the Commanders have had over the last over the owner whose name shall not be spoken tenure, right? And so now, I was thinking about this Commanders run, and I'm thinking back, like, if they are able to pull this off on Sunday, would they be the most unexpected Super Bowl participant in the sports history? I mean, you look at the Kurt Warner Rams of 1999, I think you'd have to put that up there. No one would have seen that team coming from a mile away. Maybe Tom Brady's first season as the quarterback of the Patriots. I'm sure there are others in there where a team that you just had no expectations for at the beginning of the season to all of a sudden be playing in a Super Bowl. There are others, but it would certainly be, if not the most unexpected Super Bowl team in NFL history, it would undoubtedly be in the top 5.
Man, that's honestly an excellent question, and it's pulling my memory bank right now. But truthfully speaking, and I honestly don't see any other situation where Washington isn't number one. I mean, think about the amount of turnover. Let's from the top to bottom, the amount of turnover from the front office, the leadership from the owner, Josh Harris taking over, and his ownership group. You're talking about Adam Peters coming in, and he's bringing his front office guys along, like building up his culture from a front office standpoint. He's identifying Dan Quinn as his guy to run the ship from a coaching perspective. Now you're talking about the roster turnover, 30-plus players, a 30-plus player influx before the season started, John. Like, it didn't stop at that point. Like, they kept going in the season. They had people come in and out, found their core pieces to work with. And you're talking about a team from last year who won 3 games. And at this point in the season, you're one Eagles win away to winning 15 games the following season. And you're doing this with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're doing this from a perspective where you were the underdog in every single playoff game that you played in. And if you look at it from a national perspective, you probably had 1 or 2 people out of 1,000. I'm exaggerating, but 1 or 2 people out of so many who had you winning the game. And now you're in a situation where you're doing this with a rookie. You're doing this where the culture has it took some time to develop, but it developed in one season. These guys are competing every single week. And I don't even know of a situation like you're the 6th seed and you've beaten the number 3 seed, you've beaten the number 1 seed, and now you're on the road against the number 2 seed. Like that in itself is impeccable. And if you find a way to beat the number 2 seed, you're going up against another number 1 or number 2 in the AFC. And if they win the Super Bowl, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about one of the greatest turnarounds of sports history for one season. I mean, for one team.
Yeah.
And I think it may be one of the more unexpected teams to ever win a championship in their respective sport. I honestly I understand the Rams. Kurt Warner, he was still a veteran. He wasn't a rookie.
Right.
He still had some experience in the league. Tom Brady, I think, was in his second year, if my memory serves me correct, when they won the Super Bowl. And while those two teams, like, they were definitely unexpected, and we're not going to talk about, like, even the Brady rule. Like, so what? Washington got breaks this year too. Like, I talked about it on my morning show this morning. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers dealt with injuries defensively. The Lions dealt with significant injuries defensively, but you don't apologize for that.
No.
Like, you get your dubs, you keep pushing.
Yep.
I do think that, to your question, I think it may be, man, off the top of my head, that was an excellent question. I think it may be one of the most unexpected teams to ever win a championship.
Yeah, if they win, I 100%, it is the most unexpected championship in NFL history, and maybe the most impressive NFL championship in NFL history. That being said, the amount of history that Jaden Daniels and this Commanders team would have to make by beating the Eagles on Sunday is overwhelming. And even if they get to the Super Bowl, I still think they might be the most unexpected surprise participant in a Super Bowl in NFL history. So we can debate that if they win, for sure. Of course, here on this podcast, that is not the outcome that we want, Jamal. We want to get back to our second Super Bowl in 3 seasons and reestablish the natural order of things, the higher seed, the home team taking care of business on Sunday afternoon against these Commanders. And let's talk about how each of these teams are going to go about trying to accomplish their goals. And I want to start off talking about what's going on, about Jaden Daniels and this offense and some of the things that they're going to try and do against this number 1 ranked Vic Fangio defense. Last week against the Rams, they were great up until like the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter, and then it started to get leaky. We saw the Rams start to use some tempo in that game, and that's what concerns me most about the way the Commanders like to play, the way Jaden Daniels likes to play, is running tempo against an Eagles defense that only rotates 3 defensive edge rushers. And the defensive tackles, those guys were playing a lot of snaps last week, and the Rams really started to have some success with tempo. I know the Commanders like to do that a lot, don't they? That's kind of how Jaden Daniels likes to play. Do you anticipate that being a major part of the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think Cliff is going to have to hone in on what they do best. And I think Jaden, obviously, from a game plan standpoint, is going to have to believe in what Cliff wants to do. And I think one of the best things with Jaden, like sometimes you hear it in his pressers when people ask him about how to anticipate beating the team, not verbatim, but he'll allude to, like, it's Cliff's job to figure out the scheme. I execute it and I make plays. And I think that's fair. And from Cliff's standpoint, one of the biggest things you mentioned, tempo, that game against Philly at Northwest Stadium, it came to a point where they were just like, F it, you know what, we're just going to spread Philadelphia out. We're going to run tempo, same thing. And it caused problems from a communication standpoint in the secondary, but it also gave Jaden some time to make plays back there. And ultimately, it slows down a pass rush, where, you're able to, give your offense some time to make decisions. But also, I think another thing too, what's going to be valuable for Washington is finding a way to get the ball out of Jaden's hands quickly. Like, take advantage of, those quick passes, the same ones that you've seen against Detroit at the line of scrimmage. And while, it's not going to be the prettiest thing, if you trust your playmakers like Austin Eckler to have a big game, or even Zach Ertz to win quickly at or near the line of scrimmage. And even De'Ami Brown, who has emerged as a 3-level threat against Tampa Bay, and more specifically, though, the Detroit Lions. He's known throughout the season to be the screen guy, or the check down guy, the safety valve for Jaden Daniels. Relying on these playmakers to make plays in open space is going to be big. And what's impressive, though, from the other side is, that one of the challenges that Washington faces against Philadelphia for both games, like, y'all are excellent tacklers in the secondary. Yeah. Y'all are very good at tackling, and that's one of the biggest challenges that goes under notice or unnoticed, excuse me. And I think that's kind of one of the things where, Washington's really going to have to battle to win at the point of attack, is trying to make these defenders miss. Pass protection is obviously going to be a big deal with Trent Scott coming in. Dan Quinn acknowledged that with Sam Cosmi going down with the torn ACL, one of the conversations that exist internally is like, are they going to put their best five on the field offensive line wise, or how are they going to kind of measure up? Because Trent Scott, again, he played, but Andrew Wiley, who also played guard with the Kansas City Chiefs, he hasn't played guard here in Washington, but he's played guard with Kansas City. Do you consider putting him at guard and moving one of our veteran swing tackles and Cornelius Lucas out at right tackle? And that's a true consideration as well. So like they have options in terms of trying to find a way to defend the Philadelphia Eagles front four. But if the strategy is to, be aggressive, if the strategy is to stay ahead of the chains, which is always what they want to do, but like have those positive yards while they're running no huddle and running tempo, because if you aren't getting those positive yards, that's going to slow you down and as a result as well. Like you can't really run tempo or no huddle if you're staying at 2nd and 9, 2nd and 11, 3rd and 10. Like you got to find a way to stay ahead of these sticks and keep Philadelphia on their toes. You can't go for it on 4th and 5 unless you in a certain area of the field. But you got to make sure you try to find a way to stay ahead of the sticks. But all of that comes down to that one part of execution, but the offensive line area, trying to figure that out. We don't know it right now, but it makes sense for them to try and find their best five. And Trent Scott may or may not belong in that conversation. So we got to figure that part out because your man up front, he is dangerous and he saved the game against the Rams.
Saved the game. Yeah, he may have saved the season. He absolutely may. Jalen Carter may have absolutely saved the season. But you bring up a good point with Sam Cosmi out. What do the Commanders do to try and slow him down? And Milton Williams is playing like an animal in the middle of the field as well, in the middle of the line as well. I mean, they have a couple of guys out there. Yeah. Jalen Carter's making some of the really big splash plays, but overall, that's the strength of the defensive line is in the middle right now. And it seems to me like if you want to hem. It all comes down to what is the best way to attack Jaden Daniels right now, because he's doing it with his legs and with his arm. But I think if you really want to try and take him off his game, it's to focus on keeping him in the pocket, right? Even if you give him a little bit of extra time to throw, preventing him from leaking out and running, maintaining like pocket rush lane discipline. To me, that's going to be really important. I know we're going to probably see stunts and stuff from the Eagles defense, and the tackles are going to have to then on the edge maintain some discipline as well. Like there's going to be all kinds of games being played there, but I think that's going to be the key. Is I would rather stop Jaden Daniels as a runner than as a passer right now. And I know it's kind of playing with fire either way. Do you agree with that? Is that the right way to approach him right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know like Jaden is elite as a scrambler / play extender. And obviously that stems from his ability to find like even the smallest gaps in the pocket to exploit. And he has a great feel for pressure as well. So I think I don't think you're off base at all, John. I think for Philadelphia, if you can get that interior pass rush and collapse the pocket, the gap integrity part is important. And it's funny because like it's important on both sides for Washington and Philadelphia. Like I don't expect Washington to even entertain the idea that Jalen Hurts is hurt. Like they'll find that out in the game, but like they're not gonna come into that game thinking he hurt at all. But to that point, and how you feel about Jaden, you cannot give him the slightest crease. I think on the back end, if you want to like slow him down a little bit, you may have to. You're going to have to disguise your coverage, but I think man coverage is a little bit more difficult for most quarterbacks. Simply off the strength of, if you got to make those tighter window throws, it's forcing you to be perfect as a passer. You got a little bit more leeway if you find that single high coverage and you can, throw a pass along the boundary. You got a little bit more freedom to be a little inaccurate. But if you're throwing across the middle against man coverage, you're throwing like these shallow crossers. You're throwing something like in those short to intermediate ranges where like these crossers or these end breakers, you can't afford to be inaccurate. You got to be on time and you got to see it and trust it. But against man coverage is a little bit more difficult than it is in zone. Whereas in zone, Jaden is a great anticipator. Now, I'm not saying that Jaden isn't capable of throwing against man because he did just that against the Detroit Lions. Yeah. But I think that Philly is by all means a much more talented defense than the Detroit Lions right now for the obvious reasons. And I think that's kind of what makes things challenging for Jaden this week. And, we'll see how he does. As excited as I am about the Washington Commanders and their chances, I'm not naive to the fact that this is a whole different beast. And that's what makes the feat a little bit greater if you can beat them. But I'm not naive to the fact that, from a coverage standpoint and their ability to pressure Jaden, you'll have opportunity, especially with that offensive line. Like, even when Sam Cosmi was in the game, John, y'all were able to dominate the trenches. And for 70% of it, of both games combined, like, y'all were able to kind of dominate the trenches. And that's kind of the issue that we're going to come across again. It didn't matter if he played or not. We want to have everybody stand up and play to their best ability. But even still, Jalen Carter and Milton and those edge rushers and Zach Bond, like, all of those guys, that front seven, that front six, they were able to find ways to really win up front in some of the biggest moments of the game. And that's kind of where the challenge comes from: interior pass rush and disguising that coverage on the back end.
Back in Week 11, the Eagles held Daniels to a season-low 18 yards rushing on 7 attempts and sacked him 3 times. But looking back at that Week 11 win, how banged up was he in that game, Jamal?
Well, if you look at, so he got hurt against the Carolina Panthers. He came back against the Bears. He, like, a 3-game stretch where he was probably 3 or 4 game stretch where he was playing hurt. I was never one to give the excuse of him playing hurt. Even when Washington lost the game, I did a film breakdown and never acknowledged that he was hurt. I looked at his decision-making. And that game against Philly, like, he had opportunities that he wasn't seeing properly, right? Like, he had some opportunities to extend plays, to make big plays, like through checkdowns. Yeah. And he wasn't even taking them. And I think for Washington, what also hurts too, that's also not being acknowledged. That offensive line for Washington was in flux at that time too, because there was several different nagging injuries, but more on the severe side, playable, but more on the severe side that Washington was dealing with, specifically with the center, Tyler Biadasz, and Brandon Coleman as well. Like, they were dealing with some injuries. And it was a struggle for these guys, but to the point of Jaden, he was hurt, and it's more evident not through that time and not through the moment. And the reason why I didn't acknowledge it, like, injuries, you play through them. He's good enough to play, but if you look on past that, you look at the Titans game, you look at everything past the 3-game stretch with Dallas, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. Like, you saw who he was as the injury cleared up, more specifically after the bye week. Yeah. If we want to put it that way. He was really hurt, and that rib injury really dictated how effective he could be in a game. So he was really hurt. And I think I'm glad you asked that question, because, a lot of people talk about that second game with Jalen Hurts being injured and taken out with the concussion. Jaden played a full game, like, at probably, if I had to guess, like 70%.
Yeah. And now we're looking at a situation, I'll flip it over to the other side of the ball now. You're looking at a similar situation, maybe, with Jalen Hurts on Sunday. He's going to play. He was a full participant at practice on Thursday. We're recording this before Friday's practice comes around. So there's actually a few Eagles on the offensive side of the ball whose status is unclear as we're talking about this. Cam Jurgens and Dallas Goedert both did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. I know we all have our fingers crossed that both guys will be ready to go on Sunday and will be at practice on Friday. But Jalen Hurts, we know he's going to play. The question is, how healthy is he? How mobile will he be? I don't think we're going to get in. First of all, I think the Eagles and Nick Sirianni, they absolutely want to hold that information close to the vest in order to maintain this competitive advantage that they always feel like they need to have in keeping all of these things quiet. It's kind of a frustration in Philadelphia, but it's what Nick Sirianni does, and that's fine. But we won't really know what Jalen Hurts' mobility is going to look like, and probably until we see him get on the field on Sunday. We'll know they think he's okay early in the game, because it'll probably be one of the first plays of the game that they establish a design quarterback run in order for the Commanders to at least be thinking about, on these RPOs, do we key in on Saquon? Do we key in on Jalen? I don't think Jalen is going to have the burst that he had last week running for that 44-yard touchdown. I just have a hard time seeing the guy who walked off that field with a limp on Sunday after the Rams game being able to do what he did at the start of the game here on Sunday afternoon. That being said, it's this Eagles offense has been an interesting one. It has been very Saquon reliant. He is healthy. He has had 2 huge games against the Commanders this year. He ran for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns on 26 carries in week 11, ran for 150 yards on 29 carries and 2 touchdowns in week 16, but did most of that damage before Jalen Hurts went out. Once Kenny Pickett was in the game, the Commanders did a great job really stopping Saquon Barkley and preventing him from being quite so effective. So if you're trying to stop Saquon Barkley, that's obviously job number 1. How do they do it, Jamal? I mean, 2 games where he ran all over them. Do we expect them to really? My theory is play 2 high, play 3 high. Do not let him hit the home run ball, because I don't know that this Eagles passing offense can hit the home run ball right now. So if you're limiting, having a light box and you're just kind of limiting, what he can do and not hit the home run ball, is that the way to stop him? Is it to stop the home runs? Or is it to stop the Eagles from putting together long drives where they're getting 6 yards a chunk, 5 yards a chunk, 7 yards a chunk, having 8-minute drives take up long amounts of time, keeping Jaden Daniels on the sideline? How do you approach this offense if you're Washington?
A lot of people battle back and forth with that, and I think this is going to be a game where Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Sanders still are going to have to really show that dog in them. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for them in the passing game. And the reason being is I don't think Washington is going to waste any time trying to, disguise any intentions on stopping Saquon. I think that they'll have that box. I wouldn't say loaded. I don't think that would be ideal to do that the entire game. But I think from a 3-level aspect, they'll have to find a way to play fundamental football. You got to understand where your gap is defensively. You got to trust your teammates to play in their gaps and do their job. I think what hurts Washington at times, while they do have a good job of being disciplined, even in that Philly game where after Jalen was taken out, Saquon had his first 7 carries went for 109, 110 yards. And after that, it was 22 carries for 40 yards. But after those first 7 carries, if you look at the tape from a technique and fundamental standpoint, they just honed in on their fundamentals. They just played fundamental football. And sure, I don't disagree. Jalen played a part in that, in terms of what he can provide to your offense. But from what Washington could control and their ability to stay on point, they did what they needed to do to limit Saquon. And I think for Washington, a confidence factor is knowing that they can do that if they have to face him again. And I think that's the same opportunity. You need Frankie Louvu to be a little bit more disciplined. He's more of a free roamer where he tries to make plays, right? Make those splash plays. You got to trust him to play in his gaps. Bobby Wagner, you trust him. He is the tone setter. He understands 99% of offenses in the NFL. So it's not no different this week. It's just more about executing. And then you got to make sure that people wrap up and tackle and bring this man down. And understand, from a technique standpoint, Joe Witt said it in his presser, knowing when you get to these angles, because I don't think Saquon is going to have, John, if Saquon has a game where he doesn't have any explosives, this will be one of the, I might cry.
Yeah.
I might cry, John. But the reality is he's going to have 1 or 2 explosive. The question is, how bad is it? And can you limit it from being a game breaker?
And is it a 25-yarder or is it a 65-yarder, right?
Yeah. How do you limit it? And Joe Witt says in his presser, I know people are focused on the Jalen Hurts comment, which, honestly, bro, he said that about Baker Mayfield, too. And I don't understand why people...
we get worked up about all kinds of stuff. Most of the fans in Philadelphia are not getting worked up over that. But it is, it was kind of it was something he said. And, I think it's especially sensitive given how he went out with a concussion. There's a large number of the fan base that thinks the hit that Luvu put on him was dirty. We've seen Luvu have a couple of hits. I mean, listen, if Luvu was an Eagle, we love guys like that. You know, we have, you know, I remember the Andre Waters, Wes Hopkins days. You know what I mean? Brian Dawkins was a guy, he wasn't dirty, but would just lay the wood on people. Like, I get it. You know, he's that guy on the other team that you love to hate.
Yeah, and I get it, and I'm glad you kind of expounded on like how people, the majority, like perceive the conversation about the running back comment, hitting him like a running back. But to that point, and just saying all of those things, I just think it's important to know that like those angles, and Joe Witt talks about, and being understanding of like limiting that explosive and trusting your technique, trusting your angles that you take to the ball. All of those aspects are more important than, are you going to play too high? Are you going to play like one high or stack the box the whole game? I don't think they're going to stack the box the whole game. I think they're going to disguise a lot of their intention, whether they start with one in the box and they have a late rotation right to the too high, or if they start too high and have that one guy crowd down or sprint down into the box and play his run gap. These guys just got to play discipline. And that's the most important part with Saquon, because Saquon can find the smallest mistake. Yeah. Exploit it, cut back, bend the run, bounce it outside, like manipulate the defender out of his gap by showing his intention one way and bouncing back into the spot where the linebacker already left. Like, that's how he creates his explosives. So I think ultimately it just comes down to technique and trusting your teammates. That's really is, and you got to be physical, of course. But that's really what it comes down to, John. I'm not lying to you.
I'll tell you what, the guy that I can't understand, and I'm waiting for the breakout game. I'm waiting for the AJ Brown game at some point. You know, like he has been. I mean, and I think he's been happy to take a backseat to Saquon. You know, they're winning. Saquon is a special player. I think AJ Brown knows that. He's fine with that. He's obviously, I think, we're all a little bit frustrated. Last week was the snow, and he admitted as much. As like, yeah, I don't have a problem with what, you know, this. I couldn't see the ball. You know, it was one of those weeks. But the passing game has been kind of a mystery for this team the whole season. They had a great game against the Steelers. They weren't able to build on that because Jalen went out with the concussion in the Commanders game after that. So it hasn't returned to that level. We haven't really seen the Eagles also need it to that degree. You know, when Saquon's running for 150, 160 and making splash plays, 60-plus yard touchdowns on the ground, you don't need to put the ball up in the air a whole lot. But when they've had to, they've struggled to do it a little bit. And AJ Brown is just kind of like a forgotten guy, and so Devontae Smith for that matter too. And these might be the best wide receiver duo in football, if not they're one of the top 3 or 5. And they've been forgotten as kind of a threat here in this game. And I'm wondering, you know, is this the week? Is this the week AJ Brown wakes up from hibernation? Is this the week both of these guys wake up and they actually are able to have a major impact on the game? How do you see these two wide receivers? How do you see the Commanders? What are they going to do? Are they going single up these guys? Is it man to man? How do you see them attacking these two receivers?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I mentioned the Marshawn and Mike Sainristil aspect, because I think like we're going to put a lot of focus on Saquon, rightfully so. But what that does is it leaves your cornerbacks open for opportunity. And one thing that I do like about Sirianni and how he approaches games, he has this competitive arrogance where like he loves to chat. Like the first game that Washington played against Philly with Marshawn, he targeted Marshawn like 7 times. And like the competitive arrogance side of how he approaches a game is like, F you, try and stop us. You know what we're going to do, but we're also like, if you want to take this aspect away, let's see how good you are in this other aspect of the game. And he's never shied away from that. If it suits him. And I think this is one of those games where it suits Philadelphia to really open up their offense a little bit. It's going to put the onus on Jalen Hurts, obviously, but with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, like the challenge for Washington is can you stop these guys in these one-on-one situations? You're going to have like the cover 3s, the cover 2s, like they've been playing. They played a lot of zone against the Detroit Lions. And their approach against the Philadelphia Eagles, it may not be exactly the same, but typically, like when you have that match system, even if it is zone, you're going to have some majority of man concepts, man principles. And what I did, it's been a busy week, so I haven't really had a chance to watch the full Detroit Lions film. But some of these breakdowns weren't necessarily people getting beat in coverage. It was a miscommunication or running into somebody trying to chase your receiver. And that ultimately broke the game open. But the miscommunication part, is more so from the sense of like, if you can't get that aspect, and I'm sure Philadelphia's seen it on film. So if you can't get that aspect down pat, I wouldn't see Philadelphia not trying that again this week. And what really hurt them is like crossers, like being able to anticipate the crosser on the other side of the hash and like staying on your side, picking up the crosser coming your way, and the other cornerback on the other side who is passing his man off to you, picking up the other receiver that's coming across his side. Like that's where some of these receivers are getting open. So for Washington, if there's one specific area, is like that communication aspect that I know they probably seen it on film, and I know Philadelphia's seen it on film, but they're going to get tested in that area. And that's probably some, I mean, we know Jalen loves the vertical down the sideline stuff, but if you want to win this game and make it to the Super Bowl, Jalen is going to have to find a way to take advantage of the middle of the field and win down in that aspect as well. He's going to have to make one of his weaknesses a little bit more stronger. You don't have to be your strength, but make it a little bit more stronger, less of a weakness, so you can try to find these ways to exploit the Commanders secondary. If that benefits Jalen, AJ or Devontae, good. But one person I do think is going to have a good day is Goddard.
If he plays,
so,
and we're
plays. How bad is the injury? I know you said injury.
Well, that's right. It surprised us that he didn't practice on Thursday. So yeah, they both were surprises that they didn't practice on Thursday. I think there's more confidence Goddard will play than Cam Jurgens, but we should get some answers with Friday's practice, and we'll know a little bit more after that. So, but yeah, the whole complexion of the game could change if those two guys are out, and we'll see what happens there. It's time for a prediction. For me, I'm not going to give my prediction right now. I'm going to give it at the end of the podcast. But I think the key to this game, both of these teams have done a great job getting turnovers here in the playoffs and not committing turnovers themselves. That will be a major part of whatever happens here on Sunday. I don't think the Commanders can win by turning the ball over 5 times and giving up more than 200 yards on the ground the way they won in Week 16. But stranger things have happened. Jaden Daniels is a special player. He might be a one of one, like he could be. He could be a guy who changes the landscape of the NFL. He makes me nervous as an Eagles fan for sure coming into Sunday. But the Eagles are 6-point favorites, 6.5, depending on where you're looking. How do you see this game shaking out on Sunday afternoon, Jamal?
Well, John, I'm glad you asked me this.
I'm sure you are.
Are the Eagles fans listening?
Oh, God. Okay, so we got to get ready then. All right, everybody's feet flat on the ground, hands on the table. Let's listen. Here we go.
Look, man, Eagles fans, if you want to win some money, bet the Commanders on the money line because it's happening.
Oh, no. Here we go.
No, but I do think I do think this is a close game. I think they say 6, at least a touchdown. I respect it. And I've respected every line this playoff or against Washington. So I do think Washington wins. I think that this is one of those teams, man, where them being overlooked is kind of part of the reason why people aren't necessarily focusing on what they're really good at. Like this offense, they found answers against almost any defense, even with that Pittsburgh game, going back to the regular season where they were one of the top defenses in the NFL. That Pittsburgh game, man, they put up 27 points and should have been more if the referee didn't short Jack Ertz on a 4th and 11 where he got the first down and they marked him short. You get the ball, you keep moving, you drive down the field for a potential game-winning field goal. It's 30-28. And I think for Philadelphia, what was impressive is, you know, we had moments where we moved the football in Philadelphia, but we find ourselves like going forward on 4th down, like the same mantra that we have in this postseason. We're not converting. We're hanging in there by kicking field goals, John, and then all of a sudden y'all do exactly what y'all are good at, break the game open with Saquon. You got to find a way to get in the end zone, but to this point in the prediction, I have Washington winning 24-21. And it's probably one of those thrillers where we're talking about Philadelphia is going to come down to the last drive. I'm going to have a heart attack. You all may be sweating as well. And I think it's one of those ones where Jaden has one of those last drive moments for Washington to get themselves into the Super Bowl. So 24-21, Washington is my prediction.
That is certainly a reasonable and rational prediction. I certainly think that is one of the ways that it could go. I don't know. This is a hard game to predict,
yes,
especially when you consider it because they're division rivals. And to me, it feels like the Eagles should have won both games. They intercepted Jaden Daniels at the end of that game in week 16 and should have iced it and weren't able to get it done. And then Jaden Daniels took advantage of the second chance that he got and destroyed our souls. And so, I think, there's all these different things that could come into play. The injuries, we don't really know. But it should be, I think it will be a close game. I think it should be a good game. And I think both teams will play well and comport themselves well here in this game. Listen, everybody, make sure you're listening to the Trap or Dive podcast. They got it on the YouTube. They got it on the podcast apps and everything like that. Read Jamal's stuff over at Hogs Haven as well. Always a pleasure to talk to Jamal anytime these two teams get together. Jamal, thanks for joining me here on Eye on the Enemy. Really appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir, John. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Best of luck Sunday, even though we know neither one of us really means that.
No, same here. All right, so let me give you a couple of bits of news and notes from Friday's practice here. And it is looking as though the guys who missed practice on Wednesday and Thursday are going to play. Dallas Goedert confirmed to reporters that after missing Wednesday's and Thursday's practice, he was back at practice on Friday and said he will play on Sunday. So that is very good news. The Eagles and Jalen Hurts has really come to use Dallas Goedert quite a bit out of the backfield. He hasn't been a very good run blocker here in the playoffs, but you certainly would rather have him in there than Grant Calcaterra and whoever else they would be able to insert as a second tight end in that game. When you bring Jack Stoll back, I guess. I don't know. But Dallas Goedert will play on Friday, so that is great news. Cam Jurgens did not give an update to reporters, but he was at practice on Friday. He said he didn't want to talk because he had to go get treatment, but all the reporting is, and again, this is before the injury reports come out on Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, that the indications are from the reporters that Cam Jurgens is on track to play on Sunday. Landon Dickerson got the majority of the reps at center in Thursday's practice. Tyler Steen was playing left guard in place of Landon Dickerson, but it looks like Cam Jurgens will be back. He also has not played well so far here in the postseason, but hopeful that his back injury will not keep him out of the game and that he will be effective on Sunday afternoon. And then Jalen Hurts, we know he's going to play unless he has a setback this week, which no one is expecting. He told reporters his knee is progressing, but that he will likely wear a brace on Sunday afternoon. So it's likely his mobility will be limited to some degree. I still think they're going to try and run him early just to give Commanders defenders something to think about. And you really got to hope he pops off a somewhat decent run on one of those RPOs that he decides to tuck the ball and run with in order for them to really fear Jalen Hurts as a runner, even if it is mostly a smokescreen early in the game. But again, that's kind of easier said than done. We also found out Nick Foles will be the Eagles' honorary captain for the NFC Championship game. They're bringing Nicky F back. Bring some of those vibes from 2017 back, Nick Foles. That is absolutely right. He is going to be in the link. They've been doing this every week with different legends of the team coming back to be honorary captains, and now here you are. But it's going to be it's just going to be so hyped, man. It's going to be such an unbelievable scene there in Philadelphia on Sunday. Now, the worry, of course, is the Commanders come in here playing with house money. There's no pressure on them to win. If they win, as you just heard me talking about with Jamal, like it's a gift, right? I mean, like they shouldn't even be here. They probably don't, they're in over their heads, in a good way. They don't have any idea that they're not supposed to get to the Super Bowl. And it would be a monumentally historic victory if the Commanders are able to pull this off. Home teams, the Jeff Kerr from CBS Sports had this stat. Home teams in conference championship games in which teams from the same division are playing are 14-5. So the Eagles have a big advantage here. Whenever these two interdivisional teams play each other in a conference championship game, the home team has won 14 out of the 19 times. And so that tells you all you need to know about like how important home field advantage is here. And generally speaking, the division team with the home field advantage has proven to be the better team during the course of the season. So that number makes a whole lot of sense. This other number, I think I saw this. I forget now where I saw this, so I apologize. But I'm taking this information about. Oh, it was Dan Orlovsky talking about blitzing Jaden Daniels in Week 11 at home. The Eagles blitzed Jaden Daniels just 11% of the time, and he had a QB rating, a QBR of 21. That's ESPN's QBR. In Week 16 in DC, they blitzed him a third of the time, 33%, and he had a QBR of 96. In other words, don't blitz him. Don't blitz him, guys. You're gonna be tired anyway because of the up tempo that these guys are gonna run on Sunday afternoon. And by the way, I do want to see the Eagles throw the ball more, but Jeff Kerr also notes that the Eagles are 4-0 in the playoffs when Jalen Hurts throws for less than 250 yards. They are 0-3 when he throws for 250 yards or more. So again, the idea here is to use the running game, but be able to pass the ball when you have to. Make it a real part of what it is you're doing. And you've got to be able to treat it like it's there. Like it can't just be something you pull out of your back pocket every once in a while. You've got to show these guys that you can actually do it. Now you've got Saquon Barkley. You've got this great runner. You should be able to play action pass these guys to death. You should be able to play action pass these guys to death. And this Redskins, goodness, pardon me. This Commanders defense is not very good. The Eagles should have no trouble moving the ball on this team. This game is going to be all about stopping Jaden Daniels. That's what this whole game is going to come down to. I truly believe the Eagles are going to score 27 to 30 points in this game. 27 or more points. I really do believe they're going to score at least 27 points. Can they keep the Commanders to 24 or under? Can they slow down Jaden Daniels enough? Can their offense hold the ball long enough to keep Jaden Daniels off the field? And then when they do, can they force the turnovers again? Can the interior of the defensive line, can they make Jaden Daniels a little bit uncomfortable back there? Maybe they put him in the ground and maybe they're not trying to hurt him, but maybe, the Eagles have been hitting guys hard. Maybe you take a hard hit. Maybe he takes a hard hit like the defensive coordinator for Washington was saying, hit him. If he's going to run, hit him like a running back. Hit him like a running back. I mean, that goes both ways. They're both running quarterbacks here. This game is going to be absolutely off the charts. Darius Slay is preparing for this to be his last home game at Lincoln Financial Field. He told me he's 85% leaning towards playing one more season. This is according to Ashlyn Sullivan of NBC Sports Philadelphia and WIP. But he understands that this may be his last season in Philadelphia. Either way, he's a legend. He's a legend already. But this might be Darius Slay's last game in Philadelphia. How is Slay going to go out? You think he's going to go out quietly? I don't think he's going to go out quietly either. This is a game the Eagles absolutely should win. This is a game they should win. I don't know how will we look back at this season if they don't win this game? I don't think we'll look at the season as a failure. It'll be looked at as an extreme disappointment. But you had these two playoff wins here, a legendary playoff win in the snow. You had this unbelievable season from Saquon Barkley. It's a good season. Not every season can end in a championship. It certainly is reasonable to be disappointed losing a game like this because you are the favorite. This is a team you should beat. This is a team you were better than all season long. But we've seen the Eagles lose to teams like the Panthers, teams they were better than all season long. All year long. And this has happened before. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could just be running into a quarterback that's on too much of a heater and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. That being said, I keep coming back to the 2004 NFC Championship game. I keep coming back to that Michael Vick postseason run that he was on going into that game. And it felt like, I remember feeling the same thing. How on earth are we going to be able to stop Michael Vick? How are we going to slow him down? And the Eagles did what I was talking about earlier, mush rush. Don't let him escape the pocket. I think Jaden Daniels is a better pocket thrower than Michael Vick was at that time. But I think if you prevent him from making plays, from being able to move around in the pocket a little bit, he might start to get rattled playing in a hostile environment. And if you can just build up a lead on these guys and then stick with it, hold on to the football, just don't give this guy as few opportunities as you can to beat you. I think this is a ball control offense game. I think you keep Daniels on the sideline as much as you can. And I think the run ends here. This magical run that the Commanders are on, I do believe that it ends right here. I do believe the Eagles are going to go to the Super Bowl where they will play the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch. I think the Eagles win this thing 30-21. It's close the whole way before a late touchdown, either from Saquon or A.J. Brown, ices the game with about 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the Eagles go on to the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this edition of Eye on the Enemy. I hope to be back here talking to you next week and the week after, talking Super Bowl. And we'll see if the Eagles are able to finish off this job. But first, they got to get by this Washington Commanders team that is in uncharted territory. So hope you'll enjoy this game on Sunday afternoon, and hope to talk to you again next week talking about this game. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time right here on Eye on the Enemy.